The grand ballroom of Buckingham Palace sparkled under the crystal chandeliers as Kate Middleton adjusted her elegant navy blue gown one last time. Tonight was the annual charity banquet for children's hospitals, an event she had been looking forward to for months. The dress, carefully chosen by her styling team, hugged her frame perfectly, but something felt different tonight. She couldn't shake the unusual tiredness that had been following her for the past week. William noticed her quiet demeanor as they prepared to enter the ballroom together. He had been watching his wife carefully lately, noticing the subtle changes in her energy levels and the way she sometimes paused longer than usual when getting ready for events. Tonight she seemed particularly pale under the warm lighting of their private preparation room. "Are you feeling all right, darling?" William asked softly, his hand gently touching her elbow as they stood at the entrance to the grand hall. The sounds of conversation and gentle music drifted toward them from inside. Kate smiled, the same radiant smile that had charmed the public for over a decade. "I'm fine. Just a bit tired from the busy week. You know how these events can be." She squeezed his hand reassuringly, but William noticed her grip was slightly weaker than usual. The couple stepped into the ballroom to thunderous applause. Nearly 300 guests had gathered for the evening, including celebrities, politicians, business leaders, and medical professionals from children's hospitals across the country. Kate waved gracefully, her practiced composure hiding any discomfort she might have been feeling. As they made their way through the crowd, stopping to chat with various guests, Kate felt a strange sensation beginning to build in her chest. It started as a slight flutter, almost like butterflies, but gradually became more pronounced. She continued smiling and engaging in conversations about the charity's important work, but internally she was becoming increasingly aware that something wasn't quite right. The evening progressed with the usual formal dinner service. Kate picked at her starter, a delicate salmon terrine that normally would have been one of her favorites. William, seated beside her at the head table, noticed she was eating very little and seemed to be concentrating more on her breathing than on the conversations around them. During the second course, a representative from Great Ormond Street Hospital was speaking about the impact of recent donations on their new pediatric wing. Kate tried to focus on the speaker's words, knowing how important this cause was to her personally, but found herself feeling increasingly lightheaded. The warm air in the ballroom, combined with the formal atmosphere and her already low energy, was creating a perfect storm of physical discomfort. She reached for her water glass, hoping the cool liquid would help clear her head, but as she lifted it to her lips, her hand trembled slightly. William, ever attentive, immediately noticed the small tremor and leaned closer to her. "Kate, you look very pale," he whispered urgently, his voice barely audible over the speaker's presentation. "Maybe we should step outside for some fresh air?" Kate shook her head slightly, not wanting to cause a scene or draw attention away from the important fundraising speeches. She was acutely aware that dozens of photographers were positioned around the room, and any unusual behavior would likely make headlines the next morning. The pressure to maintain her composure, even when feeling unwell, was something she had learned to manage over the years, but tonight it felt particularly challenging. As the main course was being served, Kate felt the room beginning to spin slightly. The chandeliers above seemed to sway gently, and the voices around her became somewhat muffled, as if she were hearing them from underwater. She gripped the edge of the table discreetly, trying to steady herself while maintaining her pleasant expression for the benefit of those around them. The charity auction was about to begin, and Kate knew she would soon be expected to stand and present one of the evening's major prizes. The thought of standing up in her current condition filled her with anxiety, but she also knew how many people were counting on this event's success. Millions of pounds were being raised tonight for children who desperately needed medical care. William, who had been monitoring his wife's condition throughout the dinner, made a subtle gesture to one of their security personnel. He was beginning to seriously consider the possibility that they might need to make an early exit from the event, regardless of the potential media attention it might generate. Kate's well-being was far more important than any public relations concerns. As the auction began and guests started bidding enthusiastically on various donated items, Kate felt another wave of dizziness wash over her. This one was stronger than the previous episodes, and she found herself gripping William's hand under the table with surprising intensity. He squeezed back reassuringly, but his concern was growing by the minute. The moment everyone had been waiting for was approaching. Kate was scheduled to present the evening's star auction item, a week-long stay at a luxury resort that had been donated specifically to raise funds for a new children's cardiac unit. As the auctioneer called her name and the audience applauded expectantly, Kate knew she had no choice but to stand and fulfill her duties. Despite feeling increasingly unsteady on her feet, Kate took a deep breath and slowly rose from her chair, her legs feeling unsteady beneath her elegant gown. The applause from the 300 guests seemed to echo strangely in her ears, and for a moment, the bright lights of the chandeliers created an almost dreamlike haze around the edges of her vision. William immediately stood beside her, his hand hovering protectively near her back, ready to offer support if needed. As she walked toward the podium, each step required careful concentration. The distance, which normally would have taken mere seconds to cover, felt like an eternity. Kate maintained her gracious smile, waving to familiar faces in the crowd, but internally she was fighting a growing sense of disorientation. The burgundy carpet beneath her feet seemed to shift slightly with each step, and she found herself focusing intently on maintaining her balance. Reaching the microphone, Kate placed both hands on the podium's edges, grateful for the solid support it provided. The auction item, a beautifully framed certificate for the luxury resort stay, sat on an easel beside her. She cleared her throat gently and began to speak about the importance of the children's cardiac unit that would benefit from tonight's fundraising efforts. "Good evening, everyone," Kate began, her voice clear and strong despite her physical discomfort. "Tonight, we have the privilege of supporting some of the bravest little fighters you could ever imagine." As she spoke about children who had undergone heart surgery and the dedicated medical teams who cared for them, her passion for the cause helped her temporarily push through the waves of dizziness. However, as she continued her speech, describing the state-of-the-art equipment that donations would help purchase, Kate began to feel increasingly detached from her surroundings. The faces in the audience started to blur together, and she found herself gripping the podium more tightly than she had intended. Her knuckles, usually elegantly positioned, were now white with the effort of keeping herself steady. William, watching from his seat at the head table, noticed the subtle changes in his wife's posture and the way she was holding on to the podium. His protective instincts kicked into high gear, and he quietly signaled to their personal protection officer, who was positioned discreetly near the side of the room. The officer immediately understood the silent communication and began moving closer to the podium area. As Kate reached the climactic moment of her speech, inviting guests to bid generously on the resort package, she felt the room beginning to tilt slightly. The sensation was similar to being on a boat in gentle swells, but she was standing perfectly still on solid ground. Her heart rate increased, and she could feel a light perspiration developing despite the air conditioning in the grand ballroom. The bidding began enthusiastically, with several guests immediately raising their hands to offer substantial amounts. Kate tried to follow the auctioneer's rapid-fire commentary about the increasing bids, but the numbers seemed to echo strangely in her head. 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 pounds were being called out, but the voices sounded as if they were coming from a great distance. As the bidding reached 25,000 pounds, Kate felt another significant wave of dizziness, this one more intense than any she had experienced earlier in the evening. She blinked several times, trying to clear her vision, but the chandeliers above seemed to be moving in slow motion. their crystal drops catching the light in an almost hypnotic pattern. William, who had been watching his wife's every movement, immediately recognized the signs of distress. Without hesitation, he stood up from his chair and began walking purposefully toward the podium. His movement was smooth and casual enough that most guests probably assumed he was simply joining his wife for the conclusion of the auction, but those who knew him well could see the urgency in his stride. Kate, meanwhile, was trying desperately to maintain her composure as the final bids were called. The winning amount was announced as £32,000, a wonderful result for the charity, and she knew she needed to thank the winner and conclude her presentation. But as she opened her mouth to speak, she felt her legs beginning to betray her. The sensation started as a slight wobbling, almost imperceptible to anyone watching from a distance. But within seconds, Kate realized she was losing her battle to remain upright. The elegant ballroom, with its ornate decorations and sea of formally dressed guests, began to spin more rapidly around her. Her vision became increasingly tunneled, and she could feel her body beginning to sway despite her best efforts to remain stable. Just as Kate felt herself beginning to fall, strong arms encircled her waist from behind. William had reached the podium just in time, moving with the quick reflexes that had been honed during his military training. His arrival was so perfectly timed and smoothly executed that, to many observers, it appeared to be a planned romantic gesture rather than an emergency intervention. "I've got you," William whispered quietly into her ear, his voice calm but filled with concern. His arms provided the stability she desperately needed, and she was able to lean back against his solid presence while still maintaining the appearance of standing independently at the podium. The audience, still caught up in the excitement of the successful auction, continued their enthusiastic applause. Most were completely unaware of the drama that had just unfolded before their eyes. The photographers, positioned around the room, captured what they believed were simply tender moments between the royal couple during a successful charity event. Kate, supported by William's strength, managed to complete her closing remarks with remarkable grace. "Thank you all for your incredible generosity tonight," she said, her voice slightly breathier than usual but still warm and genuine. "Your donations will truly make a difference in the lives of children who need our help the most." As the applause continued, William gently guided Kate away from the podium, his arm still securely around her waist. To the casual observer, they appeared to be a devoted couple sharing an intimate moment during a successful charity gala. But William was actually providing crucial physical support to prevent his wife from collapsing in front of hundreds of guests and photographers. William skillfully guided Kate toward a side exit of the ballroom, maintaining the appearance of a casual departure while actually providing essential support. Kate leaned heavily against him, grateful for his solid presence as they moved slowly through the crowd. Several guests approached them with congratulations on the successful auction, and Kate summoned every ounce of her remaining energy to smile and respond graciously, even as her world continued to feel unstable. "Wonderful evening, Your Royal Highnesses," commented Lady Margaret Thornberry, a longtime supporter of children's charities. Kate nodded and managed a genuine smile, though William noticed how tightly she was gripping his arm and how carefully she was choosing her steps. As they reached a quiet corridor adjacent to the ballroom, Kate finally allowed herself to lean more heavily against the ornate wall. The cool marble felt refreshing against her back, and she closed her eyes briefly, trying to regain her equilibrium. William immediately positioned himself in front of her, creating a protective barrier between Kate and any potential onlookers while their security team discreetly cleared the area. "Darling, we need to get you checked by a doctor," William said softly, his hand gently stroking her cheek. "This isn't just fatigue. Something more is going on." Kate opened her eyes and saw the deep concern written across his face. the same expression he had worn during other moments of crisis in their lives together. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the royal family's personal physician, had been attending the charity event as a guest and was quickly summoned by their protection officer. She arrived within minutes, carrying a small medical bag that she always kept in her car for such emergencies. Her calm, professional demeanor immediately put both William and Kate at ease. "I'm going to check your blood pressure and pulse," Dr. Mitchell explained quietly, setting up her equipment in a private room that had been hastily arranged by the palace staff. "Can you tell me what you've been experiencing tonight?" Kate described the progressive dizziness, the feeling of detachment, and the near collapse at the podium. As she spoke, Dr. Mitchell took her vital signs and asked detailed questions about Kate's recent eating patterns, stress levels, and any other symptoms she might have noticed over the past week. "Your blood pressure is quite low," Dr. Mitchell observed, "and your pulse is slightly irregular. This could be related to several factors: stress, exhaustion, or possibly an underlying condition that we should investigate further." She recommended immediate rest and suggested that Kate should have comprehensive tests done the following day. William felt a mixture of relief that his instincts had been correct and worry about what the tests might reveal. He had noticed subtle changes in Kate's energy levels and overall well-being over recent weeks, but the demands of their public schedule had made it difficult to address these concerns properly. Meanwhile, back in the ballroom, the charity auction continued successfully under the capable management of the event organizers. Most guests remained unaware that anything unusual had occurred, believing that the royal couple had simply stepped away briefly for other commitments. The evening's fundraising goals were exceeded, with over £200,000 raised for children's hospital equipment. In the quiet of the private room, Kate began to feel somewhat better as she rested on a comfortable chair with her feet elevated. The spinning sensation gradually subsided, and her vision cleared significantly. Dr. Mitchell's calm presence and professional assessment helped alleviate some of the anxiety that had accompanied the physical symptoms. "I think we should head home," William suggested, though he knew this decision would require careful coordination with their security team and public relations staff. Leaving a major charity event early would inevitably raise questions, but Kate's health was infinitely more important than any potential media speculation. Kate nodded in agreement, feeling both disappointed about missing the remainder of the evening and relieved at the prospect of rest. She had been looking forward to meeting with several families whose children had benefited from previous fundraising efforts, but she recognized that she simply wasn't in any condition to continue with the planned activities. Their departure was managed with typical royal efficiency and discretion. William's private secretary issued a brief statement explaining that the Duchess had felt slightly unwell and decided to rest as a precautionary measure, emphasizing that it was nothing serious and that both William and Kate were grateful for the evening's tremendous success in raising funds for children's hospitals. As their car pulled away from Buckingham Palace, Kate reflected on how quickly the evening had changed, from excitement and anticipation to concern and uncertainty. William held her hand throughout the journey home, his thumb gently tracing circles on her palm in a gesture that had become their private signal of comfort and reassurance over the years. "Thank you for being there exactly when I needed you," Kate whispered, her head resting against William's shoulder. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't reached me in time." William kissed the top of her head gently. "I'll always be there to catch you," he replied. "That's what we promised each other, remember? In sickness and in health, through all the challenges that come our way." The following morning brought comprehensive medical tests and, ultimately, reassuring news. Kate's episode had been caused by a combination of stress, insufficient nutrition due to a busy schedule, and mild dehydration. Dr. Mitchell prescribed rest, better meal planning, and a temporary reduction in public engagements to allow Kate's body to recover fully. The charity event, despite the unexpected drama, was deemed a tremendous success. The funds raised that night helped purchase life-saving equipment for 3 different children's hospitals, creating positive outcomes that would benefit countless young patients in the years to come. Kate's brief speech about the importance of supporting children's cardiac care was widely praised and helped generate additional donations in the weeks following the event. Most importantly, the incident reinforced the strength of William and Kate's partnership. Their ability to handle the unexpected crisis with grace and mutual support demonstrated the deep foundation of trust and love that sustained their relationship through both public duties and private challenges. Years later, when Kate attended charity events, she would sometimes think back to that evening and remember how William's steady presence had literally prevented her from falling. It became one of many quiet moments that illustrated their commitment to supporting each other through whatever challenges life might bring, whether in the glittering ballrooms of state occasions or in the private struggles that every couple faces together.